welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled comic book podcast where two fans and two non-fans talk about controversial and noteworthy comic books. I'm Ryan.
I'm sorry.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
And we're here with another Patreon request, but this one is actually...
Who did you say requested this one?
John.
This is less a Patreon request, more of a Patreon challenge. Like John basically dared us. I want you to cover the most Grant Morrison.
Oh, this
story.
is not the most Grant Morrison.
But one of the more Grant Morrison stories that exists, and I want it to be basically Darryl and Phil's first experience with Grant Morrison.
I will say, now that you say John requested this, it makes perfect sense to me. I'm sorry, John. Thomas Pynchon, still not a good author. Crying Blood 49, not good. Sorry. Postmodernism sucks. And this book is
and unsubscribe.
Yeah. So we're following the tradition of Kaiju Max, where we're just gonna shit on everything our fans.
Hey! Don't you dare, Sylvester. So the reason why I was very excited to do this, and I don't want our listeners to think that we're just exclusively doing Patreon requests from now on, but this is actually a book that has been on my short list of books I really want to do for the show, but are super insecure that all my friends are going to hate everything I love a lot. So we haven't done it yet. We are covering Flex Mentallo, Man of Muscle Mystery by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, a Vertigo book from 1996 that is actually, unironically, one of my favorite comic books.
So first, business stuff out of the way. What do you guys think of Frank Quitely's art?
Great. Love it.
I liked it.
Yeah, I'm a big Frank Quitely fan. His style's not for everybody because people are very blobby, I guess.
Yeah,
but,
I like his style more for indie stuff. If we ever do his X-Men.
I could see that because his style definitely was absolutely more of an indie modern mentality, especially the way he uses colors and the way that a lot of people look, how exaggerated they are. I don't know if I would see it working well with known superheroes, but
what if you knew that it was also his X-Men was also written by Grant Morrison?
Yeah. So I want to say, I want to say real quick. So I always had a bad relationship with Grant Morrison, mostly because of his fans, really.
Me and John.
Yeah, fuck you, all you. No, but Ryan admits that some of Grant Morrison stuff sucks, so he's better than 90% of all Grant Morrison fans. But when my first exposure to Grant Morrison was when he wrote X-Men in the 2000s. It was really weird. It had Frank Quitely style. It didn't match the characters, and it had other art problems beside that. And Grant Morrison also really pushed what he thought X-Men should be. So he made Magneto to a drug user who wanted to commit genocide on all humanity.
Well, it's actually more complicated than that. He was actually possessed by an alien bacteria. Sly.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And so when X-Men fans were just I don't like this, every Grant Morrison fan would be you're just too dumb to appreciate it. He basically graced your shitty series. The series was traditionally shitty and made it good, and you can't.
He came down from on high and is let's add craziness to this world.
I'm the only person that super loves most of Grant Morrison's X-Men and don't like the ending. I feel that's such a weird line because everyone either hates it or loves it, and I'm just it's up and down.
I feel the same way, honestly, but and that's as I analyze the man's more of his work, I realize it's mostly his fans I hate, not him. He's a very sincere individual. And even when he's weird, he's trying to convey his love of superheroes. So
yes,
and that's what this book is about.
He is my favorite writer. So
I will say also before we even get started, this is the type of book that you should not read quickly because I was just trying to get it done yesterday.
Oh.
And this is the type of book that after I read it, I'm I really need to sit down. This would be the type of book that I would like to read for a college English class and sit down after and talk about all the different scenes.
Yep.
Because I've been reading through it and I'm what the hell is happening? I know there's symbolism here. I'm not going to sit here for each scene and try to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I could imagine there being a lot to talk about. I mean, I guess we'll see.
Yeah. So one of the things too is, as diehard listeners of the show know, I have really poor reading comprehension and retention for things. I always get things wrong and forget things. So this is why I really like Grant Morrison, because instead of reading things slowly, I'll just read a book 3 or 4 times and keep picking up more and more things.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons when Sly and I would argue is I'd be I would be well, no, but I hated this book, but then on the 5th read I really loved it. And so I'd be God, you're such a fucking idiot.
Yeah. This was a book, as soon as I finished it, I was I don't think I can come to an actual opinion on it. To an actual opinion on it until I reread it and feel I kind of get it, because I finished it being maybe I think I get it. we were talking about
Yeah.
before we started recording, like trying to cover this is like trying to do like you've only read like the Cliff's Notes of a book for like a class, and now you're having to take a test on it, and like you kind of don't remember it because you were just skimming through most of it. So you're like I'm really not sure what the Count of Monte Cristo was about, other than revenge.
You know you can get the major themes, right? Like you
Yeah.
read this and you're like, I get some of the themes he's going for, but like with the scene where all the kids are just shitting in a hole, like what does that represent? Like there's got to be something that I didn't get on my first read through.
Yeah.
This is so like I said, I've been hesitant to do a Grant Morrison episode. This is everything I've ever wanted. I'm just like, I know that there's something here, but I just don't. I just don't get it.
I also didn't know this was going to be like this. When you said Flex Mentallo, Man of Muscle Mystery, I'm like, it's
gonna be dumb.
Superhero I haven't heard of before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is I'm like super excited because I also like, even though I really love this book because of its overarching themes, there is still a lot of symbolism in it that like I don't understand. I've read this book like half a dozen times. So we'll see. I'm sure you guys are probably smarter than me when it comes to this kind of thing, so we'll see what happens. But I do want to give a little bit of backstory, and I know Sly, you do too.
Yes.
This is a spin-off of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol book, and I don't really want to say like too much about it because like he shows up in it. But this book really doesn't
Flex
reference
Mentallo
it like at
shows
all.
up in it
Yeah,
in Doom
yeah,
Patrol?
Flex
Okay.
Flex Mentallo shows up. That's like his
Really?
first
I
appearance.
thought he was only in this.
Me too.
So that's
Oh
why
no!
I
So
really,
that's important to note. Grant Morrison writes like mainstream DC stuff in this kind of style sometimes. Like
Yeah.
he's not afraid to do this with mainstream comics. This is not just only for indie stuff.
Man, that'd be
Yeah.
crazy.
So the
Remember,
main,
by the way, I want to quickly know one comic that Phil always bitches about Ryan when he talks about comics, and one comic that Phil bitched about was Ryan. He said Ryan read like Final Crisis like 6 times before he finally liked it, and Phil's like, "Well, how do you do that?" Final Crisis is written by Grant Morrison.
yes.
Okay.
What
So-
he did a crossover event?
Yes,
Yeah.
he is like one of the biggest DC writers of all time. He's like next to Jeff Johns as one of the most influential DC writers.
Oh, that would be mind-boggling.
Have we read nothing by him before?
No, we've never read anything by him.
We also haven't read Jeff Johns. That's what, I mean, we've read Flashpoint. We have never read anything good by Jeff Johns. But that's the thing. Like whenever
Shazam, but
Shazam is great.
until Shazam, I meant. But when me and Ryan always talk about comics and it always sounds so dumb, most of the time it's like purposely like playing up Silver Age goofiness like Grant Morrison, or just trying to reinvent it and streamline for modern era like Jeff Johns. So even though it sounds dumb, if you actually read it, it's more like this or like Shazam.
Yeah. So all that really happens, like it's more complicated. There's all this stuff with the Pentagon and like military industrial complexes and everything. But the main thing that is there's like this metahuman comic book writer who wills his characters to life, and that's where Flex Mentallo comes from. He is a fictional character brought to life by his writing.
I couldn't tell how much of this book was fictional. Like, I mean, I know it's all fiction, but like, it within the comic itself, he kept making up stuff, being like, "This is not real. This is not real." And so the whole story, it's going in and out of this guy's mind and being like, "Is this happening, or is he dreaming this, or is he dreaming it into reality?" Or
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
Yes to
pretty
all of it.
sure- I'm pretty sure this is like Grant Morrison on a drug trip, and this is an experience he had, and he hallucinated Flex Mentallo.
You
in his
could
mind.
say that
see
about
that.
literally every Grant Morrison book.
Yeah, I know. I was tossing it out there because I think he admitted he did drugs while out right
Maybe
now.
we should do his gritty origin story for Santa Claus.
Sure.
See, and with a lot of other writers, I feel like that's dumb. Having read this, I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
Yes. So Sly, do you want to talk about the fictional character that was Flex Mentallo that was brought to life?
Yeah. So the actual book, like if you see the cover, it's a reference to very much.
It's not a
reference to,
book;
like,
it's a one-page ad.
Yeah, but the actual Flex Mentallo itself is a very big homage to Silver Age comics.
Yeah.
The cover says, "You buy this comic now, the Earth is doomed," and it has like all this text on like a 60s comic. Like, buy this comic, 24 full color page, all this stuff, and but the actual comics, the actual stuff it's referencing with Flex Mentallo is an aspect of those 60s comics, but never was a 60s comic. If you read any old comics, they will have this ad. It was basically a comic strip.
oh, the muscle body guy.
Yes.
Yeah, there's
my
also the SpongeBob episode parodies it when he has the inflatable muscles.
Yep.
Yes. So there's this comic where this guy, there's a skinny dork with his girlfriend, and then a jock runs by, kicks sand in his face, and when he tries to the dork tries to stand up to the bully, the guy's like, "Oh, you're too scrawny." Even the girl's like, "You're too scrawny, go away." So then he's like, "I'm gonna sign up for this muscle building thing," and he beats up the bully. Now that he's buff.
Yeah, Atlas will help make a man out of Mac, because Mac is the little guy.
Yeah, and it ends with his girlfriend being like, "Oh, Mac, you really are a man after all," and it has a big text over Mac saying, "Hero of the beach." and that's basically
Oh.
that's basically Flex Mentallo's power. He has this thing called muscle memory. Whenever he activates it, he flexes his muscles and it warps reality. And then
Not muscle memory. That's a thing we all have. It's muscle mystery.
Mr. Mystery, sorry. But I don't mean to disrespect it. And then, like, when he's like in Super Saiyan form, he flexes upwards and makes text flows over his head saying "Hero of the Beach," just like in that comic strip.
It's his famous hero halo.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even like that's what Sly means about like Grant Morrison's like Silver Age stuff is even his premises are like homages to very niche specific things of pop
Yes.
culture. Like it's all a big meta analysis all the time.
Yes. So it opens. So the comic opens with.
I just want to say before we begin that people like, because there's a lot of people probably listening that like me and Phil had no idea what Flex Mentallo was, and so far you're just really confused because you have no idea going into this. Like we didn't even explain any of the premise or why this is so crazy. And these first like 2 pages are a good indication of
Yes.
what you're going to experience.
Yes, so just to explain who's throwing this bomb at the viewer, it's another character came from the guy that drug user's memories named the
Well, no,
fact.
you should explain what this looks like, because again,
I know, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but the fact is basically like the question, pretty much.
It's a guy in a trench coat with a hat
yes.
that you can't see his face.
Yeah, and he throws a bomb labeled bomb at the viewer. It explodes, and then it turns into a galaxy, and then it turns into the guy who threw the bomb's face, like a black and white version of him.
It turns into like a cloud, it almost looks like, and then you hear,
Yeah.
flight number 230 will be boarding shortly through the K9 doorway. Through the K9 doorway. The K9 doorway.
And then it zooms out and that cloud turns into a fingerprint, which turns into the shadow on his hat, and then it's the original guy, but as like a sketch.
And now it's a drawing on an egg, and the guy, a chef is breaking his egg, and he's like, eggs, I want eggs.
and he also says, "This is your brain on drugs."
Yeah, and then Flex Mentallo comes in to this diner and he says, "I want eggs," and Flex Mentallo looks exactly like a beach-going bodybuilder, like even when
But he's like huge, he's super top heavy. He was skipping leg day all the time.
And he has like this leopard print like real tight like bathing suit on and these big like knee-high boots.
So already, it's like if you're trying to read this and you're trying to analyze it, you have a guy throwing a bomb that has the words bomb on it that explodes to make a galaxy, to make a hat, to have something about like airport terminals, and then turns into an egg about brains on drugs. So you're like, okay, and this comic keeps going at this pace where it will introduce new ideas or new concepts to you, and then it will push through, and it will like confuse you with both the narrative and the drawing, where you're like, what? Like, you can't parse what anything means in relation to anything else. Like, why use the airport terminal stuff, or did that guy actually make the universe, or is that just like Grant Morrison like winking and nodding? Like, isn't this like bizarre?
Okay. Can you guys allow me to be like super pretentious for like a second?
No.
1 second only.
1 second.
Right, Ryan, you sure want to blow it on this one panel, not the rest of the comic?
No. So what I mean is, the thing is that when I read Grant Morrison, the reason why I like to reread it over and over again is because I kind of treat it, and again, I'm so sorry how fucking obnoxious this is going to sound, but it's like when I first started reading a lot of poetry in college, like especially like writers like Keats, who we actually briefly mentioned last episode, but like how it's more so the themes and the feel more so than the plot really matters to me at first, where I'm like, I really get what you're going for and I really love this. And then on rereads later on, I'm like, okay, let's find out exactly what happened. Where more it's like the emotion behind it is what I go to a Grant Morrison book for first. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think that's pretentious. You weren't
Yeah,
like,
I think that's-
this is high art that I will put in a museum. It's like you read it kind of like it's poetry, where you just go, you attach yourself to certain words and phrases and feel for the emotions, and then you try and be like, but like, what was actually being said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, so Flex Mentallo's character, by the way, is a very like traditional Silver Age superhero.
Yes.
Like the Dino Woman gives him his, he's like gives him his food, and he's like, "You're a fine, hardworking woman," and he starts eating his breakfast, like, "What, boy? Nothing but protein and goodness in this." Like a Superman ad from the '60s, basically. Yeah. But it turns out the whole meal gets interrupted because that the fact in reality did put a bomb, but it was outside this diner. And Flex Mentallo goes to disable his muscle memory by hearing of the beach and disabling the bomb. But it's...
Oh, this is a diner in an airport terminal. Okay.
Yeah.
And he says, I like to go down to the airport once a week. I usually take a taxi there and just sit for most of the day, watching the planes, landing and taking off, watching the people come and go. Kids lugging bags and toy animals, businessmen checking watches, lovers hugging, parting. I like to watch life going by, a river of faces that never grows dull. You can always count on life. but today
Yeah.
it was different.
Sorry, clarification. He does the hero of the beach stunt, but it doesn't steal the bomb because the bomb was a dud in the first place. And that's one of the things is that the fact keeps putting bombs everywhere, but they don't explode ever.
Yeah, it's not like
yeah.
a terrorist in a way. He kind of creates like panic and stuff, but like the bombs have some other ulterior motive.
They basically explain, like, well, at least when they're analyzing the bomb, they talk about how, like, he's almost doing it just to show how vulnerable society is to a terrorist attack without even killing anybody. So it's like giving everyone the fear without actually doing any damage.
Yeah. So as this is happening, the guy who imagined Mentallo in the first place, he's like in a drunken.
Man, this is so weird to describe because it's like if you like weren't listening to what we were saying and you just skipped over this, Flex Mentallo is being dreamt up by a man in the quote unquote real world that kind of looks like Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I kept thinking he was Rick Jones. He's in
He does look like Rick Jones a lot.
Yeah, so it keeps the narrative of the whole book keeps bouncing back from Flex Mentallo solving this like mystery of the bomb and the fact and all this stuff, and this writer who is
He
he's
spends the
guy-
entire 4 panels on serious drugs, like
Hey,
literally.
Four
Yeah.
issues.
4 issues. 4 issues.
Yeah,
on
Not just
serious
4
drugs.
panels, 4
Yeah.
issues.
On serious drugs and talking on the phone to someone. I don't think we ever find out who it is.
Well, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be
Oh,
like
no,
Good
we do.
Samaritans. It's implied that he's talking to like suicide hotline. 'cause
Okay,
he's like,
I thought the implication, but I don't know if I wasn't sure if he was talking to himself and he was crazy. Okay, so
Well, again, we like it's not 100% one way or the other.
yes,
But
but
there's also a reveal at the end on who's the other end of the phone.
There's a reveal, but I mean, this is like this book. You can't take anything for granted.
So he's looking for this, like, he finds, like, the phone that he wants to use, that we later find out is to call, like, a suicide hotline, is this, like, it looks like a really campy, like, bright yellow Batmobile phone.
it's a toy phone, toy car phone.
Yeah, it's like, it's a toy phone, exactly.
Yeah, so he starts calling his phone, and he's narrating, and his ramblings while all this other stuff's happening. Flex Mentallo goes to give the bomb to the police commissioner, who is like this gruff, smoking guy.
Grizzled, bald detective.
Yeah, and even though like you find out later, he realizes like grizzled, but he's like kind of a sweetheart deep down, because everyone's nice in this book because it's a comic.
Yeah.
Everyone's a good
And
person.
he's been getting all of these, like, fake, like, cartoon bombs, these glowing rings, X-ray goggles, star scepters, all these things. He's like, I got a drawer full of all this crap. It's the debris of 1,000 out-of-phase parallel Earths, according to the last note or manifesto or whatever we got in the mail.
And so one of the things that fact does is leave facts around and basically clues saying the fact is the game's up wax worker, which is like what he gives to this villain called the wax worker before he beats him up. And
It's like the trademark thing you do as a campy old superhero where you get a note in the mail and it says the fact is, and it's like your time's up, and then the fact, the superhero, the guy in the trench coat and the top hat, he flies in and he kicks the villain in the face, and it pans out because we see this happening to this wax worker guy, and it's back into the artist. Like the Rick Jones guy that he's looking at this.
It molds into a drawing of the fact fighting this wax worker.
Yeah.
A black and white sketchy drawing of him.
Yeah, because basically, like, Flex Mentallo gets this card, and then he's like, wait, that's impossible. The fact's fictional. And then it cuts to, like, the scene, like you guys were talking about. And I really love the way it transitions into this, like, hand-drawn, like, little kid sketch. And then the writer's like, haven't seen this stuff for ages. These are brilliant. When you're a kid, you just do it. You don't even think about it. It's totally pure. And he's like, oh, I gotta stop reading this. I'll be here all night. And, like, it reminds me so much of, Darryl, your book, X-Graves.
Yeah.
Where, like, it's like, there's something incredible about, like, a kid's pure imagination, even when their hands don't have the ability to capture what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's just like this pure, like, nostalgic expression.
Even the fact that it's like you don't even think about what you're aping it and what you're like stealing from. It's just like you want to draw superheroes doing heroic things and saving people.
Yeah.
And it's like it is fun and it is innocent. And you there's no like grittiness or darkness behind it. It's just like good guys doing good things.
Or even any need for a deeper meaning behind it, just because I like.
Yeah, exactly.
The joy of it.
It just gets so meta because the Flex is saying, "Oh, we're drawn by this guy Wally Sage," and the fact is drawn by Wally Sage, but it's in the drawing of that Wally Sage drew.
Yeah, the drawing is talking. The panels that the guy's drawing are
It's
talking.
partially inked too.
Yeah.
Like it's not together, but then it continues with Flex still talking.
This whole this whole comic is basically the Genesis game Comic Zone.
Yes.
The guy can animate comics.
No, he gets pulled into the comics, whereas here, this guy's ODing, and inside of his head, I assume, is where all this is happening.
it's the inverse where the comics are kind of coming alive in this sense.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is where Flex like kind of recaps the Doom Patrol origin in like a panel where he's like, I was another one of the fictional characters, just like the Fact, but I was brought to life by Wally's psychic powers. And he thought me off the page and into the real world so that I could help him, but he died. Maybe the Fact got out too. Maybe if I find him, everything will come together. And that's when the guy's like, yeah, maybe God's just decided to ring down the curtain on this whole dumbass drama. This whole thing's dumb. Okay, bye.
Yeah. And so we get to see a little bit of like Flex's adventures. He is very much a Silver Age hero. He fights Origami, the Folding Man, the Lucky Number Gang.
One of the things Grant Morrison always does in his books is he adds like 100 characters, and if you ever read his like scripts or like behind the scenes stuff, he has like these full thought out origins to all of these characters that are only on for one page. You're just like, wow, you're crazy.
Yeah, like the Lucky Number Gang all has billiard balls for their head to denote what number they are.
And so, like, to contrast that, like, Flex is watching TV and he sees, like, the world's going to shit. Like, and people, like, there's a farmer talking about, like, oh, we're in the last days. It's obvious. I built a rocket ship to my son to the another planet, so when this planet dies, nothing happens.
Yeah.
A guy says, I was sent from another planet to save you all, but it's too late. I forgot what I had to say. You corrupted too much of your fucking dirty human minds.
Yeah.
And the question is, like, who's going to save the world now? And it's a very common theme in Grant Morrison where it's why Ryan bitches about like Alan Moore, where he focuses on the shitty things, when Grant Morrison's like, why can't we get inspired by like good things instead of focusing on like why things are terrible? But
and the like framing, it bounces between the two framing devices because Flex Mentallo's now he's watching a commercial for food, which cats love. It's like, give your cat food. That's right, food.
Cats love it.
And Wally Sage is also feeding his cat watching the same commercial, talking about how like he loves his cat and he says goodbye to it, and then he walks out into the rain.
Mm-hmm. This is where he goes to die. He lays in an alley for the next 3 issues, just overdosing, maybe or maybe not, because he's like, I don't know if I even took drugs.
Yeah. And so to build up more like the world is going to shit. The colors like change from like the colorful Flex Mentallo to more like an Alan Moore like gritty book where everything's washed out. A dingy street. The cops are pulling out a guy who OD'd on PCP out of a alleyway.
Yeah, and this guy says that Wally is talking about how that's not his real name. He's like just some pop singer, but that's his secret identity. Like he wants to be this comic book writer. And then, like Sly said, it cuts back to like the Flex Mentallo looking so out of place in this gritty, dark world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's like, oh, so who's going to save the world? Superheroes. We gotta find the superheroes, basically. And he goes to the place where that Wally Sage, the writer, grew up.
So what he says was he goes up to the police officer and he's like, tell me the first fact about anything that comes into your head. And he's like, that's weird, but there's an old abandoned school about 2 blocks there. And Flex is like, okay, I'll go there. That's like, just, that's...
Yeah, it's the superhero thing where it's like, what's something weird? And it's like, oh, there's this abandoned storage house. And it's like, that's where the villain's going to be hanging out.
Yeah. So he goes to that school and he sees an image of it's like, I guess they say it's a haunted school. So I guess it's a ghost image of the writer as a young boy looking up at Flex Mentallo as he's walking through the hallways. We flash back to his childhood, and he talks about how, man, I used to just love reading comics. Like everyone makes fun of them, but they were fun. Like Mondo Mysterious, that show's awesome. Why do people gotta make fun of comics?
And meanwhile, while Wally is narrating this, Flex is talking about like how simple it used to be, where we would turn the whole world on its axis to save the life of one child, or how we flew to the limits of unknown titanic galaxies to petition the gods for humanity's survival, or when we rescued kittens from trees and asked for no reward. Like just like how like superheroes, like how on paper that sounds so dumb, but like. And then it cuts to Wally, who's like, I love that. Everyone makes fun of me because they think it's childish and stupid.
This character who's dying in the alley for 4 issues basically is Ryan, because the whole time he's like, guys, comics are great. I'm dying, but like, why can't we have superheroes?
And he talks about how, like, at the end of your life, you just think about the stupid stuff, the stuff that gave you joy. You don't think about War and Peace or James Joyce. You just think about, like, your favorite superheroes, the Blazer, the Flaming Flag, Lord Limbo. And he just lists all these things. He's like, there's totally amazing names. They're, like, archetypal. They come right up from the depths. And you think, how can they say this stupid stuff? But then he, like...
How can they say that stuff's stupid?
Oh, sorry.
Why do people get so ashamed of things? I mean, I really love those comics. I didn't start saving them up until I was about 12 or something, though. And he starts relaying the story about how he was in a hospital and he was looking at this light that was going.
Yeah, and then he gets a comic, a crossword puzzle
So
In
okay,
the hospital,
so
right?
first, while he's in the hospital, he's like so dehydrated and he's asking for like water from the nurse, and the nurse like just ignores him, and he says like it was only a few hours, but to a kid it felt like eternity, and it's like something that stands out to him. And like you think about like those moments when you're a kid, like you see he talks about like some comic that he saw that like scared the shit out of him. And like you remember these like specific moments that to everybody else it's just nothing. You just like had surgery and were asleep. And like how like the superheroes like helped, and meanwhile Flex Mentallo is he meets this old janitor, and he's like, oh, you're wasting your time. This used to be a school for sidekicks, but then when all the superheroes went away, the sidekicks had nowhere to go, and so they just like lived on the street.
They formed roaming tribes of boy sidekicks armed to the teeth and trained to kill.
Yeah.
Beast Boys and daring young athletes, super fast Mercury Boys in chrome trimmed suits, Archer Boys with trick arrows and devil may care grins.
And this guy, this janitor, has his own secret origin where it's basically Shazam. He was walking through the
gets
alley.
literally a crossword puzzle, and it says SHA blank A blank, and he's like, "There's a secret word here that brought the universe into being," and I said it, and yeah, that's the end of that story. I became superhero.
Yeah, and he was like, I was a superhero, and I didn't ever see the old man again, but sometimes I think he was myself from the future. And Flex is like, you know, like the Silver Age campy guy. He's like, you've got all these powers. You can help me save the world. And he's like, no, it's just the people that need saving. The world's fine as it is. And he was like, you know what? I figure I'd better live here and suffer as a man than be a god looking down on others. I'm like a reformed alcoholic. One more day, just one day at a time. And he's like, here, you could take the crossword puzzle. I still have it.
This
And
comes
he
up
gives
a
it to
lot
him.
throughout this comic. Like the magic word, which is obviously Shazam,
Yeah.
keeps coming up.
So as he's looking at his crossword, walking outside, the fact he's another bomb, and he's another dud. But let me try to make sense of these pages.
He chases him into one of those photo booths.
Yes, but the fact is gone, and he's like, the only remains is photos that prove that he was there. The photo booth photos, photo reel that proves he was there, and that's how the issue ends.
And then Rick Jones' character is just like, yeah, I had a bottle of vodka, I had 2 ecstasy tabs, I had acid, I had hash, paracetamols. Basically, it's like, I'm committing suicide, obviously. Here's all the drugs I took.
Yeah, and he's like, no, I don't. It's not that I want you to stop me. I just wanted someone to talk to while I wait, you know? I just wanted to talk about comics. All those shitty, amazing comics.
Goddamn. How are we going to get through the other 3 issues? All right, issue 2 opens up with him in the alley still, saying, "Whoa, I'm melting, man. Oh, never, just take acid. Never mind. I don't know."
One of the things I like about this is this was a small thing I was thinking as I was reading through this. Is it's so easy to be like he is on drugs by like going into off colors or making him all stretchy and weird. I like that for the most part, it's him freaking out, but it just looks like a guy sitting in an alleyway, like looking at his hands.
Yeah.
And then he lays down and it does like a weird like warping with the doors. But then that's about like all you get. Then he's just like laying down again. It uses bizarreness in such a minimal way.
Subtle ways for
that
sure.
it kind of makes it more strange because you're not sure what is happening.
Yeah.
And he goes through his memories a lot. He's like, I had a fish when I was a kid. He was in a bowl.
His name was Peter.
With a ceramic castle.
Just one of those cheap little things. It makes me feel creepy of just thinking about it, that there's this like weird fake castle in there. That's all he had.
And then we get the famous boys shitting in a circle at a
Yeah, and he's
school.
like, I don't know where they were shitting. Why were they shitting? Why am I there?
Yeah, so he's remembering he was when he was a little kid, he was in like a wash house or something, and this adult walked him in holding his hand. It's just like a circle of boys just like shitting
Squatting
on the floor.
and
Looking angrily at him.
And the whole point is like, well, I mean, we'll get to more so in the scene, but he's like, I don't remember. I don't know. My mind's just going there, but like, I don't even want to think about that bad stuff. I just want to talk about comics. I'm committing suicide, and I want to talk to you about comics, not all my trauma.
And so it cuts to Flex Mentallo fighting this giant who has 5 like orbs that circle around as his head instead of a head.
Yeah.
And each orb is like a different power.
It's like kryptonite. Each one does a different thing to Flex.
One of them is lamb and turkey, but that's like that's the cat food that he was feeding him in the first issue.
Oh.
He was feeding the cat.
Oh,
that's cool.
I was like, what the? Okay. So yeah, it's like the different kryptonites. And then he's like, it cuts back to him trying to find the fact.
Yeah, the fact is
Jesus.
part of some group called Faculty X. Those are the terrorist groups. We forgot to mention
Feels
that
like Jesus, because as Flex Mentallo is walking around, like a little boy comes up and he's like, "Can I have your autograph?" Make it out to my best friend Wally Sage, which is the little boy that was here that went to go
Yeah.
like shit in the.
But he's also the big boy who was making this all up.
Yeah, and then there's like a town that the boy's seeing made of ceramic stuff.
Yeah, it's like made of the stuff that the ceramic castle in the goldfish tank is made out of. I also do like when they go back to him fighting Mentallo Man, the big orb head guy. When they tell you what the different orbs do, it's like pink Mentallo makes you explore complex issues of gender and sexuality,
Which is actually, it's based on pink kryptonite.
Yeah.
I know. It's just like, and then black one puts you in a coma.
Yeah, one that makes you forget who you are and you live another life.
And then it's the same, the way that Flex is looking at his hand is the same way that Wally Sage is looking at his hand in the alleyway.
But that's
with the ring.
so that's what confused me, because this kryptonite thing makes you forget your identity and forget who you are. You might think you're a divorced woman in Idaho or a corrupt businessman in Paris. So as he gets hit by this and he starts forgetting who he is, and then you cut to the guy in the alley again, and I'm like, was he a superhero? Forgot who he was. Anyway, so we're in space.
The thing that I really like about this Wally scene that they cut to real quick is he's like, who am I? Am I a pop singer dying in an alleyway? And he's like, and he's responding to the suicide hotline. He's like, why? Why do I have to keep talking? No one's going to find me. I know you mean well, but I don't want to be found. It doesn't matter if I die here. I'll still be alive somewhere else. And it's him as a little kid looking in two mirrors next to him. So there's like a whole line of him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, there's just endless parallel worlds, infinite versions of me. Somewhere, like some of these infinite versions aren't killing themselves right now.
I'm not a singer. I'm an office executive or the father of a little girl or a comic artist drawing this story.
Yeah. And then it's him. It's a space it's a shot of the superheroes in space, and then it's also him in an alley where he takes this little matchbook, and inside of it are two little people, and this is Nano Man and Mini Miss, and they come up a bunch.
And they're spooning each other.
Yeah, they're like Ant-Man and the Wasp, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy in traffic saying, "Oh my God, can't you hear the giant bomber? They've bombed that can blow up the world." And then he's trying to get everyone's attention.
There's a back with Flex Mentallo. Now we're back. Flex Mentallo walking through the dingy streets again, and now the Soothsayer saying this.
It's funny because it doesn't matter. Like either like this could be happening to Wally Sage or Flex Mentallo, and it has like the same kind of like consistency where you're like, okay.
Then there is actually a bomber in the sky with all the superheroes on it, and then it cuts to some junkies in a subway bathroom, and they're gonna do some drug called crystal, and it makes you become a god but then kills you, and he's like,
it makes you feel like a superhero but then you die.
Yeah. And so this guy injects himself with this, and then there's all these people in the subway, and one of them goes and asks Flex to help him.
It's a man in drag
queen.
It's a man in drag. I don't know. Is it okay to say drag queen? Is that?
Yeah. There's drag queens.
All right. So she goes to Flex and says, "Oh, this guy's ODing," and Flex calls her Miss. "Leave it to me, Miss." And she gets so happy that he calls her Miss.
He calls him Miss because men in drag are still men.
The thing is, there's not enough time spent on whether it's a like someone dressing in drag or a trans person.
I got the implication it was somebody who wanted to be, because she seemed happy that she called her Miss.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell. But anyway, I would like to point out that when this guy gets his injection and he feels like a superhero, he says that he realizes that he's just a story, that like he's telling his own story, and he becomes cosmically aware. So Sly, everyone does get cosmic awareness.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh goddamn cosmic awareness.
It's fucking Rick Jones. You see, like he looks like Rick Jones. In fucking battle.
But then so we see like him as this like perfect like Atlas Silver Age looking superhero.
Yeah, I like that his hair like goes from this ratty like pale dyeing hair stuff to like the beautiful blonde locks of like the perfect Aryan Superman.
Yeah. But then it cuts to like Flex's vision, and he's just like having a seizure on the ground.
Yeah,
all,
and
like,
throwing up.
Raggedy
and he's like, I've seen all a million worlds. I saw my own eyes looking at me. I can see the world. We're all just ants. Who's gonna save us? You can't look at the sky. It's full of them. And then you see all these superheroes flying through the sky as he's praying. And he's like, they love us. They've always loved us. They come to save us. They're gonna take me with them. And
Flex starts searching his pockets, and he says, I have this magic word, this crossword puzzle. If you say it, it'll save you. But Flex can't find it. It must have fallen out of pocket. And he says, oh no, I must have lost it. I must have lost it, as this guy dies in his arms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then we get some exposition about the Golden Age and the Silver Age. It's like, he's basically just talking about what they are.
It's how weird the Silver Age. Then came the Silver Age when superheroes were reinvented, and that's when it started to go like a bit weird. And there's like an air balloon, Flex Mentallo, and Flex Mentallo is a monkey, a zebra, an alien.
Yeah. And he talks about how like the Golden Age was like the Charles Atlas hard body homoerotic wish fulfillment, and then the Silver Age is just like
strange transformations, multiple realities, dreams, hoaxes. It was
Yeah,
like the hard body began to turn soft. The masculine hero is becoming fluid and feminine and always changing shape.
And all that stuff was like a prophecy of the arrival of LSD on the streets of America. The comic writers and artists intuited the social transformation in their work. And like that's funny because we've talked about this in like the history of Marvel, how like college kids like love Doctor Strange and stuff. But that style did like predate that social movement by like a decade.
That's interesting. And so he's saying all this as there's a bomb, like a nuclear bomb exploding, and he's like...
Another thing, too, that I like is that he says, am I making any sense at all? I can't remember what I started to say. I don't like those big future heads. Aliens. They were always fighting aliens in the Silver Age, because there's a recurring theme in this book, too, of, like, aliens. Like, when we saw Wally Sage's apartment in the first issue, he has a VHS tape of UFOs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another common theme, too, is he keeps forgetting where he was, and he's like, who am I talking to? Like what was I saying? And he's like, I think I'm some kind of mutant. Why didn't the superhero save us from the fucking bomb? I feel sick. Why didn't they stop my mom and dad from fighting? Who's that man in the wash house with me? Am I dying? Like, it's so hard to follow.
And it cuts back to him in the wash house with the boys sit in a circle shitting, and it shows Wally Sage looking up at the man, and the man has an alien head.
Yeah. And this is also where Wally starts revealing that his parents used to bring him to these old political bookshops when he was a little kid, where they were filled with pamphlets about the bombs in Hiroshima, and like they would show like the babies born after the nuclear bomb, and like he thinks that he was affected by that, but that is actually something that Grant Morrison grew up with. His parents were huge political activists, and he was like, as a little kid, he would be reading superhero comics while they were like sitting outside protesting like nuclear proliferation and stuff. And it's, you know, just that's something that Wally is also doing.
We cut to a bar where Flex Mentallo is, and this guy's complaining, the bartender's complaining about it. Then this woman walks in who says she's, what was her name?
Killer Kitten.
Killer Kitten. She tattooed her whole body like a leopard. She's like, oh, you're looking for the Legion of Legions, huh?
Wait, we have to say, when she tattooed her body, like, she is naked and, like, showing off her naked body.
Yeah, but it's like leopard print body.
Yeah. Like Mystique and X-Men. Like, basically like Mystique and X-Men with the skin.
Yeah. She comes over to Flex Mentallo because he's in this bar and he orders a big glass of milk because he's like...
He's wholesome?
He's very wholesome. And she's like, I'm Killer Kitten. Look, I'm naked. Let me drink some of your milk.
Yeah. And then she's like, yeah, the Legion of Legions is an ultimate superhero team. You should know it. And so Flex is like, I'm going to go look for them. And then also there's this guy in the bar who's like, I was in space. I was on the Apollo missions. And the superheroes were there. No one believes me. But they came and I shit myself when I saw them. They're spying on us right now. Please believe me. They're everywhere. The superheroes are everywhere. They're watching us. And then that scene.
And he flips out. And then he just goes, shit. No one believes me. Buy me a drink, will you, big fella? Like, that's how he's coping with the non-reality that he lives in.
I like as this is going on, it keeps, like, focusing on this guy that looks like a gray hair Superman, like Clark Kent, just walking through the bar. Because he has, like, the same build as Flex Mentallo.
Yeah, as you're saying, the Supermen are everywhere.
Yeah. He goes outside. Flex Mentallo goes outside, and there's a guy with no face that's talking to him.
Yeah, now it's a little question.
The question. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. That's the mystery pilgrim.
Yeah, and he's like, they used to call me Mr. Pilgrim. Now they just call me asshole. And he's like, yeah, there's a teleport tube that leads to the satellite HQ of Faculty X, which is where the fact is from, I guess, and the Legion of Legions. And he's like, this is not a good road to take, but here's how you get there. And then Rick Jones' character in the alley is like, oh my god, I see all these universes converging, and he looks up and he sees all these Earths spinning around, and then also he's freaking out and dropping the phone, but the way it's drawn is it doesn't really show motion. It shows that all those existing at once.
It's like if you did multiple panel, like a person running, but you took all the images and you superimpose them on top of each other, so it's 4 different like legs all moving in like one single
when you
frame.
See those panoramas with those really long dogs.
Yeah,
that.
And he's having a seizure here, basically saying, I want it to stop. Who's holding my hand? The bomb. Ground zero in my head. Can't hear you. I'm scared. Collapsing into it. I'm really scared. Oh shit. Who's with me? Not Silver. Black. It's black. It's hell. I shouldn't have done it. It's taking me to hell. And that's how the issue ends.
End of night. Crisis on Earth Omega. As this guy's drunk dying in the alley.
So the cover of issue 3 is very much like a parody of like 80s grit because it's Dark Knight Returns, which if you've never seen it, it's black in the foreground, dark blue in the background with a lightning bolt and then the silhouette. But this time instead of Batman, it's Flex Mentallo with his leopard print like undies. And there's also on the cover itself, there's all these stickers like this has been resold from comic shop to comic shop,
really?
and it's signed by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Yeah, it's just like a cool like this is when comics became gritty and also valuable.
Yeah. So issue 3 opens with the police chief from the very beginning of the issue that Flex went and talked to, that he's just talking, like, he has narration boxes about how he doesn't believe in superheroes anymore. And then, like, his wife is telling him to go back to bed because he's just staring out the window at the rainy street. The wife starts talking about the fish. Did you feed Peter? I think maybe I've been forgetting. I keep forgetting everything. And he's like, yeah, I fed him.
She's obviously sick
Yeah.
in some way, yeah.
She's in the bed. She has like something her head covered. And she says, "Oh, I thought, did you feed Petey the fish?" And she's like, "Are you kidding? Petey's gonna outlive all of us." And spoilers, he at least outlives the wife, unfortunately.
And he says, "I don't want there to be a war. I don't want my wife to die." And it's the same fish that we mentioned earlier that Wally had.
Yeah.
And he's in the police chief says, I don't believe in superheroes. They abandoned us to our fate. They all went away.
All but one.
And also, all his narration is written like mocking the style of Rorschach, where like rain falls on the monkey house. The inmates are screeching and tearing one another
Yeah.
apart. Nobody's coming to save us. Nobody's listening to the ultrasonic shrieking of our signal belts. And then that's when it's like all the superheroes went away, all but one, and it cuts to Flex in the dark, in the rain.
Yep, marching through an alleyway. And then Wally Sage gets back up and he's like, oh, still alive. And he has like a really long like run-on sentence about the little boys in the circle and the hand. Who the fuck hand is that? And what was I talking about? What's happening to me? And then it cuts to the wife's funeral of the police chief. And they're just walking through the graveyard. There's like 2 little tiny gravestones. And the priest is like, strange, isn't it? Children perhaps bearing birds or mice. It's just the little detail that's carved onto the little stones. Very odd. And then the police chief reveals that Petey the fish has died.
No, the fish is going to outlive them all, because the police chief actually has cancer.
Yeah, and he's like, "What are we gonna do now? You and me. What are we gonna do now? Shit, cancer. Goddamn cancer."
I thought that meant his wife.
I thought that was the wife.
Yeah, I thought that was
Yeah.
the wife too.
Okay, so maybe that's more.
Yeah.
So then the police chief he goes to see this villain that's locked up named the Hoaxer, who basically,
Which is kind of like he looks like the Riddler, but red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, the police chief sees him and he's like, what are you going to do? Because he's asking him if he's going to get out of prison. And he has a toothbrush, shoe polish tin, and a copy of National Geographic. And he's like, look what you can do with all these things. And it's like a crazy MacGyver thing where
He uses the flashlight on the tin to make it look like the sun, and the National Geographic pictures to make it look like he's in nature, and the police chief sees himself like in the wild, like on a river.
He basically turns this into a hologram of the National Geographic cover.
Yeah.
To make
And
it
it's
very
like one of those
vivid.
Silver Age things, like that's all like the Riddler explains, this is how I did it. And it's like, I don't think that makes any sense.
oh my God, this
I know.
this story, because it's like we flip back to like Wally Sage and he's talking about where do you get your ideas, like where do they come from, and they goes, fuck, this is really kicking in. And they goes,
And he
"Yeah,
also
sounds-"
it shows him when he's younger, like how he's dating, and everyone, his ex-girlfriends are like, you don't show any feelings.
You talk about love, you write about love, you sing about love, and he's sitting there playing guitar and he's like, anything to avoid actually feeling it.
And while this is going on, there's a blonde lady walking down an alleyway with like an open shirt and just a top on.
Next to Wally Sage, like this is not like
and then
different.
there's a whole bunch of guys like with like silly.
They look like
visor
from
masks.
Punisher 2099 or something.
Yeah,
Like,
they have a knife and they're mugging her and robbing her, and they're going kitty kitty chicky licky slicing nicey.
Specifically, they look like the mutants from
Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And then like it shows like his girlfriend leaving and he's like, maybe I can get a song out of it. So like
Yeah, no matter how shitty things are, you can always get a song out of it. I really like that line.
so he's taking like all the trauma and everything and turning it into a creative outlet, but it's all pure escapism. He's not actually feeling anything. And this is when he reminisces more about like seeing what he thought were comic books, but they were these like anti-war magazines and brochures that were
Yeah,
just
it's like a nuclear bomb going off, a skull, Hiroshima, baby.
Then he starts drawing porn.
It's him as a teenager. He starts drawing like just naked ladies, and I love that he's got like his tongue out too. He's like, yeah, this is great.
Well, then he jerks off to it.
Yeah, he definitely does.
Because I'm trying to think, because it's weird, because as it's showing this, it's him talking about the bomb. It's like, even mom and dad were scared of the bomb. What could you do? Where could you run? First time I read the word oblivion was in a comic story, The Fleshless Ones.
He's jerking off as he says this.
Yeah. Constant terror for 2 weeks, convinced that horrible creatures from the subway were wearing my parents' skin. Nowhere was safe. There was no one I could trust. I knew I shouldn't have read those adult comics.
Yeah, and he also talks like, imagine having to think about like the bomb all the time as a little kid. What does that do to you? Oh, as a teenager, it makes you someone who thinks about the end of the world constantly, and you're like all fucked up.
Yep.
Who needs girls when you've got comics? That's the slogan of this podcast.
I wish I could be sick. I wish I could sick it all out. That's the slogan of this podcast.
Yeah.
The world did end. Something happened to me. Something worse than the bomb, and it all died. It's just taken me this long to catch up. Alone in the world, alone in my room. Now that superheroes are as fucked up as the fucking rejects who write about them and draw them and read about them, all the heroes are in therapy and there's no one left to care about us. No one at all.
Heroes in Crisis, am I right?
Yeah.
Ahead of his
Yeah,
time.
it is very like prescient reading this now and being like, man, this is still pretty applicable.
Oh, this is important comics for Ryan because when like you might like if you just know Alan Moore, you're like this is so cutting edge. But like Ryan and me read like 30 years of what like Alan Moore writing did to comics.
Yeah.
So that's why Grant Morrison is such a breath of fresh air to Ryan because what seems like a breath of fresh air to people who don't read comics at all is like really old hat, like this pure cynicism that the world is shitty. If everyone got powers, be pure shit, world is shit. And people like Grant Morrison are like, what if it wasn't? What if we could just have good things?
I think this comic would be a lot more like impactful, really interesting, had you guys not made the arguments about how Alan Moore and like that future wave like past the Bronze Age had like so thoroughly turned comics into gritty adult stuff where you can't have anyone to look up to, you can't have any figures to aspire to become. Where it's like this is very like hard hitting stuff that is good. Where it's like it's true there's no Flex Mentallo anymore. You just can't exist in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now he's still in. It cuts back to Flex, and he's walking through the subway, like these sewer tunnels. I mean, and thinking back to his adventures about how like they fought, all these
The counting tree. Think as hard as you like, Earthman. You'll never be my intellectual. The counting tree. And so
like he's looking at that campy stuff, but he's walking through this like dark sewer, and he's like, strange how the sewers seemed so much darker than when I fought Lars Lotus's worm warriors here. It's like even when he was fighting against evil, it was still bright and hokey. Now he's just alone in like the sewage of society.
Yeah. And then he runs
And
into
Faculty X throws bombs at him, and they're confetti bombs.
more of the fact that are just throwing those bombs at him. And then he stumbles upon the nightclub.
Now, one thing I want to point out is the Faculty X guys. It looks like they're speaking nonsense, but they're actually not if you spell it out.
Is it anagrams?
No, if you just pronounce it phonetically, they're telling him to never grow up.
Gavin?
Oven?
You have to grow it backwards. You have to read it
Oh.
backwards.
Never.
Oh, that's an N. Oh, never gra hop.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was trying to pronounce it because I'm like, this isn't an anagram. I was working through it in my head, and then I was like reading it out loud, but I guess I didn't. I thought that was an H.
I didn't get it here, but later on they say like dreams have children or children have dreams or something, and it like clicked for me, so I flipped back and I was like, oh, it's saying never grow up.
And he finds this nightclub. KNIG.
So this is
It's for adult superheroes only.
Yeah, so I just realized like this is taking the piss out of Frank Miller because it's nightclub or K.
Oh, the Dark Knight. Yeah.
And he loves. There's never been a Frank Miller comic without prostitutes, and this is like a prostitute place.
And this is great. Before we get through there, we get an image of Wally Sage, Rick Jones in the alleyway, lost in a bird's nest boat, lost on the sea, and he asking what's worse than the bomb.
Yeah, what's the word? What's the word? What's the word? And again, it's Shazam, I think, right? It's the word that turns you from a stupid boy to a Superman. What's the word? What's the word?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have the police chief talking to the hoax, and he reveals that the fish that outlives everyone, the fish has actually died like more than 5 times and stuff, and he just keeps buying a new one, and they keep calling it Pete.
We change the fish more often than we change the water.
That's probably why the fish kept dying. You have to change the water like every 2 weeks.
Yeah, and he's like, we're trying to save the world, and the hoax is like, don't think I've ever saved the world before. It'd be nice to try. So then we get Flex Mentallo in the strip club, and this is a pretty long.
This is more than a strip club. This is like there's orgies happening. There's S&M stuff going on.
It's the most like bizarre stuff. It's almost like a run-on sentence of like nonsense when you read it.
It's also like it's like if superheroes were going to be in like a sex club, like
be over
using their powers to like to like Mr. Fantastic and someone else who can stretch, like stretching onto each
Yeah.
other, and
Or like someone grows really big and just like lets guys crawl in their clothes and stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
and meanwhile you get Wally Sage's narration over this. It's so wet. I really enjoyed it because it's just so like bizarre and uncomfortable. Where it's like bubble bath. That's what it's all about in the end. When you come right down to it, luscious snake bitches in red rubber, sexy telepaths stripping your mind naked. Frederick Wortham was right. Orca Jr. in a suit of skin tight black and white plastic, writhing on the polished leather seats of a black and chrome amphibious dreammobile with lantern headlamps and jagged dorsals. And it's you're like, what the fuck?
fetish dreams of flying women and boy hyper sluts.
I think this is why I assumed that he wasn't talking to him on this phone call. Because I didn't know. I don't want to imagine what their reaction to this is. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And it's like all these people, and what I really like about this is it's so easy to be a shitty artist and to take a cheap way out because you're in a sex club, a crazy superhero sex club, and it's real easy to go for straight titillation and just like a bunch of naked women making out and stuff. But instead it's just like it's stuff you don't want to be a part of, but it's someone's kink. Like you have like Reed Richards like stretching his arms all around this lady that's stretching her arms all around him.
Catwoman's in SSNM.
There's a guy in a cage with wings, like Angel. There's
you have
guys
like
melting on these other two people
it's
who are
living
fucking.
metals that are melting on two people having sex, and it's just like what the
And
hell
the thing
is
that I really
this?
like about this is like I think the way you put it is like that it makes it so much interesting. Grant Morrison does a lot of stuff like this where, to me at least, and I could be wrong or desensitized or whatever, it feels more fetishistic than pornographic. Like it feels more like exploring the weirdness. Whereas in a lot of comic books, even like not mature comic books, it's just like this feels like porny. Like why would like it's just supposed to like get me
titillate.
excited.
That's
and
that's a very important point because we talk about that a lot. How like Heroes in Crisis, like it's not pornographic, but when they show like a woman's ass or like in her underwear,
Yeah, it's specifically meant to titillate.
The way it's drawn, Frank Quitely's art isn't really sexy in these panels. Like, it feels like it's just like it feels like an indie comic showing a fetish, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's trying to basically get to the teleport tube to get out of here, but
Flex
he's being
Mentallo
dragged
is.
down. Yep, by all these orgy goers and
A swarm of bee women operating with one mind aimed their guns and strafed my face with aphrodisiac stings.
And he's trying to like claw his way to the teleporter to save the world, but instead is being dragged by all the sex stuff, which is probably some allegory about comics. Getting bogged down in weird sex stuff instead of saving the world or something. He's like, I'm the last hope for a doomed world.
And it cuts back to Wally. Zap, pal, look out. Comics aren't just for kids anymore. Fuck it.
And then he's like, multiple universes converging, and he's standing between two Earths as they're colliding into each other. He's like, mustn't let them touch. And then Death starts dropping like atom bombs on him. He's like, fuck, I don't want to die. And then he thinks back to when he was with his love.
He says, because listen, when it all comes down to it, how could you love anybody the way you loved Thunder Girl? You try and it's like heaven, but it's only like heaven. It's not heaven, is it?
What's like heaven? Shit. Oh shit. They fuck you up. Those comics, they really fuck you up something.
Yeah, and then he's like, something's happening. Where's the bomb? I'm dying. He starts puking. World's colliding and imploding. And big bold text.
There's a big nuclear bomb going off in the middle of the kids shitting from the wash house. I can't look at this. It wasn't a fucking dream. This was fucking real.
Yeah.
God, it wasn't a wash house. Aliens. I was abducted.
Was I abducted? Was I abused? Oh, fuck.
He's puking all over himself. Who's holding my hand? This is fucking impossible.
But now he's thinking back, and as he's the little kid, and he's like, I'm going to turn around and see who's holding my hand. I'm not scared. Even if it's like my uncle abusing me or a fucking alien, I don't care. I'm not scared. I just want to know who's holding my hand. I just want to know. He's like, this is impossible. No. And it cuts back, and you see the full page.
It's a superhero.
And he's like, welcome to, what shall we call it? Where you get your ideas, remember? And it's basically like superhero building land in the background.
Yeah. So we have one issue left, and if you're listening along, try and guess how this ends. Because I was the same way where I'm like, does it just end with him dying? I'm like, that'd be too dark for a comic that so far has the message where it's like superheroes used to be great. But I really loved this issue with how much it was like delving into how like the Silver Age kind of started to ruin comics, and I love that it did go into like that sex club where it's just like everything's just really messed up, because sometimes when you do read these comics, they're like, this is just like someone's weird freaky fetish. Like when Captain Marvel was impregnated by her own rapist son, you're like, what the, like, why do this?
But people don't make fun of that stuff. They make fun of like, oh, gee whiz, like
Yeah, where they're like, oh, look how dumb and campy this is. Well, this is like serious and adult. And I do like how he's just like, this stuff like fucks you up when you like start to normalize it.
Yeah.
So the guy that's holding his head, he actually has a kind of interesting super design. He has like a cloak over his head, and, over his eyes, and he has an eye, a single eye design over the cloak, so it looks like he's like a cyclops when he's wearing.
He's also dressed in green, so he doesn't have. At least I didn't pick up on a direct analog to him, unlike the Shazam.
And that's important. That's an interesting thing. I don't know if there's a purpose behind it, but superheroes generally never use green unless they're more like anti-heroes. That's why Hulk is green and purple, because the secondary colors indicate a villain. Primary colors like red and blue indicate a hero.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah. So like
That's really
this guy's wearing green, so I don't know if that's signifying anything, but he's kind of like
cool.
the head,
Yeah.
kind of like the head hero.
Knowing Morrison, it's probably all on purpose.
Just like with the reveal in the last issue, you don't know whether or not to trust these guys. Because there are people like, the superheroes are out there watching us in like their B-12 bomber flying overhead.
That is probably it, because when I first saw the superheroes talk to because when astronauts saw superheroes, you see this guy, and I wasn't sure if he was a super villain at that point. So
The guy was screaming and shitting.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they're talking about this villain known as the Absolute, the end of all life everywhere. And
So,
it's
but
coming,
there's like a Justice League meeting
the Legion
with
of Legions.
the Legion of Legions.
Yeah, but there's like a monkey in a tuxedo. There's
Yeah.
the tiny people, Nano Miss and whatever.
There's two people with flaming heads.
Nano Man and Mini Miss.
Sorry.
Yeah, respect the characters.
Yeah, so the Mammoths and the other guy are going somewhere to go fight.
They're going to the quantum realm, basically. They're like, we gotta drop down to micro infinite size.
Oh yeah, just like like an Ant-Man, and
Yeah.
go so small, you go into like.
You just gotta get really small and they'll fix things.
So they have to seed the Absolute from the quantum realm and plant the ultra hypnotic code word.
Yeah, and so Earth, one of them runs into teleport after this and says, "Earth is finished."
Oh yeah, I forgot to say, the Absolute is not just killing this world; it's killing all the parallel realities.
Yes.
So they're like, oh my god, we lost reality beta. Like when that person runs in from the teleporting tube, they came from a different reality.
And as Nano Man and Mini Miss are shrinking, they start to forget each other, and they're like, if we could only remember that we're in love and the magic word. And it's again missing those letters that would make it Shazam.
Yeah, and so they have a moon. It looks like the Mac at Night commercials from the 80s. Moon Man.
It's just like a crescent moon with a smile on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Man in the Moon type of deal.
They have that at the center of their Legion of Doom table as they go off.
Legion of Legions.
They're heroes.
Yeah, Legion of Legions. Sorry, I spoke.
I'm like, hold that in your minds. The key is the man in the moon.
Yes,
Yep.
and so they're like, it's not death, it's something new. It's not death. Prepare to become fictional as they fly their bomber from before into the Earth.
Yes.
And like this sun-like Absolute is consuming the Earth, and you can see it consuming the back of their plane as they crash.
Yeah. So then we come back to Flex Mentallo. Now everyone cut to the police chief where Flex Mentallo was before the orgy place, but now everyone at the orgy is dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's with the Hoax, and the Hoax is trying to analyze what happened, trying to analyze the teleporter. We cut to Flex, the cover and this splash page is like a multiple images creating a Flex Mentallo's body, but it's like a composite of a million images put together.
Yeah.
I feel like we should make maybe this the episode image,
Yeah, so
because
you could-
Yeah.
it is very hard to describe.
Yeah. And so that's I guess that was effect of him teleporting to the Legion of Legions area.
Yeah.
And
And you get a bunch of like the fact, the guy in the trench coat and the hat, just arranging like stuff as he's
The
like
set.
dizzy. Yeah.
He's arranging the set around him. So Flex, by the time he opens his eyes, he's on the satellite HQ of the Legion of Legions, even though we just watched them build the set behind him.
Because he teleports into like a blank white room, actually.
so that's a very so it's blank. The fact puts everything in there like comically, like it's literally like a comedic skit. Then we come back to Wally Sage finished vomiting. And now he's back. He's like, oh, something happened in the back of my house. I'm still alive.
And he realized that he didn't take a bottle of painkillers. It was M&M's.
No,
Yeah,
he's
M&Ms.
not sure yet.
Oh,
Because
but
it's
it
still a
fits.
bottle of painkillers. It's just there's M&Ms all around.
It shows the bottle on the ground, and it says the drug name, but it's M&M's scattered around it. So like now
Yeah.
it's like, did you really take drugs or did you now? He goes outside, and now he's in that ceramic village that looks like the goldfish ceramic
Yeah,
building.
and he's looking at the Earth from space.
He mentions I was talking about superheroes. It wasn't aliens. It wasn't abused. I was abducted by superheroes. The ones from the comics. They're real. And he says that as he walks out and sees the Earth. And he's like, this isn't where I live. And then little Wally Sage is like, use your binoculars, you'll see better. And gives him binoculars.
And he's like, I remember this dream. I was just a kid. In the dream, I met this man with stripy trousers, like he's wearing. And I gave him my binoculars. And he looked through them and said, and then in quotes, he says, there I am. And he's looking at himself from the binoculars.
They talk to you all the time when you're in shows, the circle of boys, again, around the nuclear bomb. They talk to you all the time when you're little. They live in, I don't know. It's like a factory where ideas are made. They escape from the absolute. But the plan went wrong. Reality was flawed from the beginning. I mean, have you ever felt like there's something missing? They have to come back home. We can save the world if I could just remember the magic world. What? No, the world doesn't have to be the way it is. We can be them.
So here he's saying is abducted by superheroes. Is this imagination or something? And like, is that what's going on? That his imagination is what abducted him when he was a kid and bringing him to this land of dreams and superheroes. And these kids are also seeing their imagination, and the absolute is like reality, which takes you away from that.
So he then like explains everything, that what happened was that
explains in quotations.
Yeah,
because I did not. I don't know what you're about to say.
So what happened was reality was being destroyed. Okay,
Yep.
They sent in Nanoman and Minimus to rebuild reality. So instead of having superheroes in them, what they did was they erased themselves so that reality could survive. So they rebuilt reality without superheroes, but they themselves became fictional. So they basically became imaginary things, and people made the comics because they knew something was missing in reality. So like he's talking about, like, I remember not remember, but like it reminds me of like all the things people say now, like since the 2016 election, how we're like in the worst timeline, like that kind of narrative where people could feel that there was something missing from society, that there should be something better. So they filled in those gaps with stories about gods and superheroes that like, well, this world is so terrible, but maybe there could exist people that would come back and save us. And so humans created the superheroes, but there's, it didn't quite work out perfectly. That's why like the world is starting to fall apart.
And that's the weird thing, is the underlying thing is that Nanoman and Minimus, like in the comics, they're just like crude attempts to remember the truth about reality. Is that superheroes are real and then made themselves unreal, and they have to be real again?
Yeah. To save us from ourselves, because the world is bad.
Okay.
Yes. So back to the Legion, like Mentallo on the Legion's headquarters. Now he's somebody's on the throne talking to him, bragging, "This place is mine."
The villain.
Yeah, it's a villain. I made you flex. I made your whole little scabby little world to entertain myself, and now I'm going to destroy it. And it's fucking Mac at Night. Like, I can't stop look at it and not think of Mac at Night.
The Crescent Moon head.
It's Crescent Moon head.
It's a guy, like, you can see his like human hands. He's just wearing like a blue toga
and like a moon mask.
Yep.
When it's lost in the dark, it's my face you see. I'm the villain. Ooh. He really does that. That's not me making that. So he revealed the fact. The reason why, because we talk about the fact being Faculty X, and it's just that Faculty X was actually just the fact that one guy, and this guy is dispersed through time. So he was trying to reach him while he was dispersed through time, and he was sending all these clues to make Flex Mentallo reach this area.
And then Flex pulls out the original fact card that says the fact is the fish got changed more often than the water.
Yeah.
And while he's reading that, the Moon Man pulls out black, what is it, Mentallium?
Yeah, and he says, your world isn't real, Flex. It's just a cheap replica. An imaginary story barely fit to amuse children and illiterates. I'm here to bring some realism back into your life. And that's the one that Black Times.
So this is what, is Alan Moore or Frank Miller? Is that who this guy is?
Yeah.
And then the Black Times is the one that kills Flex Mentallo. But then the police chief and the hoaxer come in and say, "That's enough, asshole. Drop the rock."
They hold a gun to him. I got 6 rounds of semi-jacketed realism right here for your ass.
And then we have Wally Sage now saying, on one reality, the bottle had M&Ms in it, and the other, it had drugs in it. So I don't know which one I'm on, but one of these realities I'm going to die.
And then as he's talking to the person on the phone, all of a sudden somebody comes in through the other end, and says, "The Legion of Legends trying to get through." And he's like, "Shit, did you hear that? What the fuck was that?"
And then he fully remembers the whole explanation that the superhero told him when he was a little kid, that like those ideas are being translated, but it's up to, what do you say, like basically because they rewrote all of reality, they went into a quantum coma.
Wait, do you guys see inside this body machine, they're injecting that drug that guy took into the
Oh,
vein.
the crystal.
When they're built, when we say they're rebuilding the universe, it's like an organic, like half organic, half
Well, no, he's inside everybody's head.
Yeah,
This is imagination.
I'm describing this.
Yeah, because it is bizarre imagery.
So it looks like all the heroes are just building this half flesh, half machine, big construction.
Like castle.
Yeah, castle, basically, exactly.
Yeah.
And he says, like, the only way for us to become real is society has to believe in us again. Like, society basically has to, like, deserve to be saved by, like, believing in superheroes. And he says, my favorite line in the whole book, don't be afraid. Remember, before it was a bomb, the bomb was an idea.
Help us rebuild in your world the shining towers in Metropolis, the glooming canyons of Satellite Hill, the little orphanages of Farville, the plazas and monorails of Archway City. No more barriers between the real and imaginary. And he's like, I think I'm losing my fucking mind. And so we come back to the chief fighting to save Flex Mentallo, and the hoax like breaks it into like a million organic pieces.
Yeah, it gets turned into a little tiny cube.
Yeah, by the villain. He says, the hoaxer hoaxed. Give the program, Harry. Happy endings are for kids. And
He tries to make the police chief shoot himself. It goes blam, but then actually, it was all a hoax.
but
Trick or
I
treat.
like his line before he shoots himself. The police chief has a gun to his head. Jesus, I love my wife. What the fuck, you fuck? What do you love? God damn. There's no. And the bad guy says, there's no love in this world anymore. Do it, Harry. Do it for all of us. And then it shows that the hoaxer hoaxed him, and it was all illusions to make him think that he was winning. And then Flex Mentallo does his Here on the Beach, and the villain falls down, and it's the writer.
Yeah, while
now
he's
you know
It's
what
the writer as a teenager, has a teenage shitlord edgelord.
Yeah. As Darryl Stuffin.
Yeah, he's like, there, so now you know my secret identity, so what? Doesn't matter, it's all shit. Pathetic fucking power fantasies for lonely wankers who've had so much sand kicked in their faces they look like the opening credits of Lawrence of Arabia.
Look at you, a half-naked muscle man shrunk. What's that supposed to signify? What are you? Do you know what you are? Sure, I'm a superhero. Being clever is a fine thing. But sometimes a boy just needs to go out of the house and meet some girls. Gamble or stamp. I can show you how to be a real man, as he extends his hand out to the guy.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ.
And he says, like, the world's going to end. I made this world to end, but I don't want to die. I just want to be the last boy on Earth on my own, where nobody can see me or hurt me. I've killed the world. That's what I've done, haven't I? It's the apocalypse.
And Flex Mentallo says, no, not if I can help it. And he says, and the narrator says, it was M&M's. Why should I want to commit suicide? I've got a brilliant life. It was him. It was me, age 16. He'd have killed me if it wasn't for Flex. I must have known I made him up. I must have known when I was little. Flex would never let us down.
So his teenage cynicism was saved by his childhood's optimism.
Yeah.
Do you believe in, so you start talking back to him in the alleyway. Do you believe in superheroes? Imagine it real. Imagine technology, their culture impacting of ours. Dreamatrons and boom shoes, Paris space suits and omniscopes. Imagine the music we can make, ultrasonics, ultrasound.
I love that idea. Like imagine not just like the crazy sci-fi technology, but imagine what art would be like in superheroes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have to go see my girlfriend. I have to tell her. It's all just stupid. I have to tell her.
Also, it shows him as a kid reading
Yeah.
comics, and the light he's watching it by is a Man in the Moon light.
Yeah. What happens to that light? He says, and he's like, as he's saying, I gotta go talk to my girlfriend. We see the mini superheroes hugging each other, saying they love each other, as about to go into fiction, basically.
I think it was like them waking up because there's like a whole pictures of them all hugging with their eyes closed, and then there they go, love you, always love you. Then they go, my God, with their eyes open, looking up at like us, the readers.
We also have a new narrator saying, Nanoman Minimus, ambient pulse cycling, system activation. I'm like, okay.
And whoever's on the other line hangs up, and he says, "Hello, was something I said? Oh shit, no batteries." And he's like, I'm alive. There's no fucking batteries the entire time.
But who was he talking to? The Fact.
Yeah, so he thinks like, I was talking to nobody, but on the other line, on the payphone was the Fact, and he hangs up the Fact and comes to the phone.
And leaves a bomb there. I don't know.
We're almost done. We're almost out.
Yeah, so the police chief talks like that now that the dust is settled. Rules doesn't stand a chance. They won't come. Why should they come? Why should they care? Look at this. I thought you had coldness here before disappeared, but look. And Flex Mentallo says, they'll come. You came through for me, Lieutenant. They'll come through for us. The Fact is out there somewhere, and I know we can trust him. The stress is on his way. All we can do is hope. This is Flex Mentallo signing off, and it cuts, and then it ends with that becomes Flex Mentallo's image becomes a drawing on the guy's living room floor.
I'll be right here if you need me.
Yeah.
And then his cat walks all over it.
And then it says, "Welcome. You have been inhabiting the first ultra post-futuristic comic. Characters are allowed full synchronization with readers at this level. The key is the man in the moon."
As the writer is walking past, the writer in the alleyway is walking past the fact of like realizing it.
And he
Hey,
also
like-
walks past the crossword and picks it up and says, "No way." And also the narrator's now, "The Nanoman Mini-Miss Quantum Weave is responding to the code activation. Quark turn on. Atoms turn on. Molecules turn on." And he says the word. And it's not just him, it's Shaman, I guess.
You've never heard the word shaman before, Phil?
I have, but why?
Because Grant Morrison's a warlock. It's a whole thing.
Oh, okay.
So he believes in magic too, like Elmore.
Oh yeah. But Grant Morrison's magic is all about like masturbation stuff. It's weird. That's something for another episode.
I'm like,
then-
what?
Anyway, full system activation, cells turn on, he says the magic word, he explodes into Shazam powers.
And he goes to his girlfriend, saying, the other narration saying, "Brace yourselves for total reality." His girlfriend wakes up, blinded by a light breaking through her window.
Yeah. Last call for flight 230, says the hoax who's blinding
Yeah,
her.
it cycles back to the beginning of...
Yes, the girlfriend's like, "Why so bright? What was that the dawn?" And the boyfriend says, "Look up!" And it's all superheroes flying away. In the last panel, towards the
Superheroes
sun.
have come back to save us.
But they're not, because it's a hoax, right?
Yeah, I think they're flying like towards the Earth.
Yeah.
I don't think they're like
Okay.
flying away
Okay,
necessarily.
I thought it
They
was
come
her
back to Earth.
perspective, or that might have been her.
It's because it looks like they're flying away from the perspective of how it's drawn, but they're going towards Earth. I'm assuming. I'm not assuming they're flying away.
that makes sense because you can see stars, so I assume that's space. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is Flex Mentallo, my
Man
fellow listeners.
Of muscle mystery.
I mean, viewers. Your viewers.
That's right.
You're reviewing this with us in your head.
Yeah, we're creating images in your mind. Just like it.
So, everybody knows I love this book.
Yeah.
What did you guys think?
It's one of those books where I have more fun talking about it than reading it.
Hmm.
It has a lot of interesting ideas. My problem with like this kind of story is I like very efficient stories. So like you like stories where you have to read it multiple times to figure it out. I like story to get these ideas out and the first time, and then when you reread it, you find more and more layers. So this is not my type of story, but I do like this story. Like when I first read it, I was like, it left me with a good feeling. That's the best way to put it. It left me with a good feeling, and I did not regret reading it.
That's good. Actually, before we get to you two, I forgot to ask this. What do you guys think it means that the fish has changed more than the water? Because that comes up a couple times.
Is that like superheroes dying and coming back or something?
I took it more that like your perspective has changed more than the reality around you, but I don't know.
That might make sense.
Because like the main characters are changing out more often than the world is.
It also makes because like his perspective on the world was optimistic, then became cynical, then became optimistic again.
Yeah.
Also, how did this fish belong to the kid and to the police?
No,
chief?
I still think it's poor Phil. I still think it's about like superheroes dying over and over. 'Cause
Okay.
it's like it's Petey the fish has been like a thing that the wife held on to, and he keeps dying, but new
He
Petey's
keeps the
keep
title, yeah.
yeah, new
Yeah,
Petey's
so-
come in.
Yeah, and so even
I
though
like
like
that a lot,
people,
too.
even though people in your real life die, you always like superheroes always come back in the comics.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Cool. Daryl, what did you think of this book?
Oh man, I have a lot of thoughts. The first thing is this was a good read. I enjoyed it, and it's one of those things because as I was reading it, a lot of times when we're reading comics, it's just like, okay, like sure, this thing's happening, or that'll happen, or this is a thing that's been here. Whereas here, as I was reading it, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what is happening. I'm trying to figure out what do these mean, and I love. Like, one of my favorite things is using symbols as callbacks, being like, this wasn't just like a weird, offhanded, like the boys sitting around the circle and shitting, where you're just like, okay, that's bizarre. But when it keeps coming back, you're like, this means something. This has a significance that, like, you have to parse out and figure out. And I love reading stories like that. I greatly enjoyed this.
So you're a postmodern asshole like me.
Yeah, my favorite issue. I still like issue 3 the most because that's when it got like it's the most darkest and twisted. Whereas like issue 4 was very much like superheroes are here to save us, which I'm not totally into. I'm way more into like how have these things morphed your reality and your expectations and just like your perception. Whereas like 4 was way more about like your optimism stuff, about like the superheroes, we need to believe in them, they like sacrifice themselves and to save us in the end. Where I'm not so much about that. I really like the idea of like how fucked up you became after yeah, like jerking off to a bunch of latex clad like Robins.
One thing that I really like about Morrison's style, like, because Sly and I have complained a lot about, like, decompression in modern comics, how it takes, like, 6 issues to do anything, and I feel like Morrison really goes out of his way to make each issue its own, like, thematic piece.
Yes.
I feel like you can't skip an issue here and then feel like you totally understand. It's like you do need to read this in series.
Yeah, and I get, like...
Unlike Heroes in Crisis.
Yeah.
Like, there's a comic one we might do eventually, Multiversity. There's a comic that's basically Grant Morrison's taking on Watchmen. Like, what if Watchmen was happy? And it takes one issue and it gets the point across. Like, he's one of the few writers who knows how to make an issue efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Phil, you're our literary. You have a degree in English or whatever.
Sure.
Or whatever.
I liked it. It was weird, obviously, but reading through it, I don't think I've ever read a comic like this before. I appreciate the non-linearity of it, and you know, it's one of those things that, like I said, I'm reading through it and I'm like, there's definitely meaning in a lot of these things I'm just not getting right now, and I do like that because then I'm like, I can always go back to this and like dig deeper. Like, it feels like a book with a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, one of the things that's always tricky about that is, like, there are some books that have that are still not rewarding to read on that first read. You know, because, like, there's a lot of books that, like, oh, it's so deep and it means all these things, but if you miss that completely, then why would you pick it up again? You know, like, so I'm glad to see that you still enjoyed it even with
my
that
fear is always with the opposite, where it looks like there's a lot of depth to it, but it could just be a lot of like non sequiturs between the concepts, where you're like, this is just a lot of things thrown in here for the sake of being like, for dizzying you.
Also, what I will say is, like, you're saying, okay, oh, I'm a postmodern asshole if you like this book, but I don't actually think so, because I think a lot of postmodernism is characterized by, like, look, this book has no meaning in it.
Yes.
There is no meaning in anything.
Okay.
But this definitely has meaning. Like,
That's very important.
Yeah, the last issue ending so positively doesn't feel like a postmodern. It feels like
That's
Grant
fair,
Morrison
yeah.
trying to communicate a concept.
what he does, he uses really weird techniques and meta narrative stuff and like self-referential stuff, and it is bizarre, but at the end of the day, he does have like messages he's trying to show, and a lot of postmodernism, especially like earlier, like 60s, 70s postmodernism, is like, none of this makes sense because nothing in life makes sense, and things cannot have meaning. And
there's like two defining features. There's like postmodern philosophy and postmodern style. Al Moore is postmodern philosophy, but like more gritty style. Grant Morrison is a postmodern style, but he's not a postmodern philosophy.
Yeah.
Like more contemporary postmodern stuff has been like, well, maybe we can make meaning out of this non-meat, like.
But there's a philosophical term for that, like postmodern, like nothing matters, like in terms of like all the ideologies we had before was bullshit, nothing really matters. Like, that's an ideology. I don't know if it's called postmodernism, but it was attached to postmodern works for the longest time. Like, that's an ideology in of itself.
Yeah, and I think this is way more readable. I was making fun of John earlier because that author Thomas mentioned, like, I remember trying to read those books in college, and I'm like, his whole point is that there's no meaning to anything, like, and I'm like, that's not, for me personally, that's not rewarding. After you're done, you're like, cool, there's no meaning to anything, and the whole book.
Why did I read this then?
I read 100 pages of nothing.
More than 100 pages, unfortunately. But like this, I'm like, no, he's trying to say specific things with it, and I appreciate that, and I would definitely read more Grant Morrison.
Me too.
Oh
I really like his writing style too. I think his prose is really cool. One of the things I'm interested in is seeing, because I feel like it works really well for this book, I want to see if it's a similar style of prose for other books, because I'm like, I don't know if it would work as well unless it's in this like dreamlike, crazy state of like hopping back and forth between different scenarios.
I was gonna pick, like, for next time we do a Grant Morrison, something like more like easy and digestible, like a Joe the Barbarian or We Three. But now I want to go like weird as hell.
No, I want to see if you can do normal.
Okay, interesting. I'll have to think about it.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah, interesting book. If any of it sounds interesting, you pick it up and give it a read.
Yeah, it's only 4 issues, so like it's a pretty quick read relative to some of the other stuff that we cover.
Yeah, and you can, and it's like you read it and feel smart, unlike most of the stuff we cover.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening. In the meantime, before our next episode comes out in 2 weeks, you could check out the Flying Machine Patreon, patreon.com/Flying Machine, where we're a couple weeks away from finishing Heroes in Crisis. And last episode was a doozy. And you could also check out all the other shows on the network. Specifically, I want to plug Potsdora Podcast this month because for April, the last 2 episodes have been a lot about like Christianity with views of like sexual orientation and gender identity, and not that Morrison delves deep into it with his pink mentalium or whatever, but Jay goes into much more detail than that about like how can you be an evangelical and still be like affirming of different people's lifestyles and who they are, and turns out you actually can, and it's people that don't are just assholes. Shocking. But yeah, so definitely check that out and all the other shows at flyingmachine.network. And thank you for listening to Divisive Issues. Before I was Ryan, I was an idea.
I've been the hero on the beach. Hero on the beach. Oh no, I've been the hero on the beach. Sorry.
I've been changed more often than the water.
And I've been a circle of boys shitting around a mushroom cloud.
That was going to be mine if I didn't get it.
I also like intelligent alloys flowing and melting across shuddering flesh, forming pleasure armor.
I think you mean Sex Mentallo.
Oh yeah, I forgot my ultimate joke. Guys, Sex Mentallo.
Stay in continuity.